Hello Uganda, hello everyone. I welcome you to this edition of UBC Ground Zero. I'm Bailey Amon Ortega is my name, and I welcome you to this very important edition. Today is 7th October 2023, and on the same date, 7th October 1962, were preparing to celebrate our freedom and our independence. And 9th October, 2 days after that day, we were given instruments of power, were given our flag, were given everything to symbolize that Uganda was free and free indeed. On Monday, next week, we're going to be celebrating our independence, the 61 independence. We're celebrating 61 years of independence, and I'm here to celebrate with you, the people of Uganda, in this very interesting edition of UBC Ground Zero. Ambaide Amon Ortega is my name. I just played our national anthem that we sing with pride because we remember 61 years of independence, of our freedom and self-rule. I still re-echo the relics of our independence, the relics of our national anthem, which is our pride, but also which is a prayer. O Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free for liberty. Together we will always stand. And today we must also stand as the people of Uganda to realize this very interesting self-rule. We also sing, O Uganda, the land of freedom. Our love and labor we give. Whatever you're doing, make sure you do for the sake of this country as well. Make sure we love this country. And the most important statement that I always love in this is the international relations that is put in our anthem as well, where it says, and with our neighbors all, at our country's call, in peace and friendship we live. The last and very most important, we say, O Uganda, the land that feeds us, by sun and fertile soil grown. For our own dear land, we shall always stand, the pearl of Africans grown. That is our anthem, and we all know that our national motto, for God and my country. These are very powerful statements. These are very powerful prayers that we made then, or the people of Uganda made then, and we must really embrace them. This is the 61st Independence Day anniversary celebrations that we're going to have in Uganda in 2023. And I remember liberty, when it begins to take root, is a plant of rapid growth. That was George Washington. Looking at the 9th October marks a significant day in Uganda where we freed ourselves from the colonial rule and our destiny was reshaped. Our defense of liberty stands today on the foundation of sacrifices laid by the founding fathers at the Pan-African outlook, who pioneered the global agitation for freedom of colonized persons, especially on the African continent. It is also known that the Pan-African Conference, which took place in London in 1948, attended by late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, late Julius Kambarage Nyerere, Kwame Nkrumah, Baba Boyce, Sir William Tumband, and also a Ugandan by the name of Semakula Mulumba, who were present in that very important conference in 1948. The main objective of these Pan-Africanists was to chart ways of starting serious strategies to decolonization and emancipation of the African continent. These are the main reasons that's why we are here to celebrate our independence. It is very important to know how far we have come, because when we know how far we have come, we'll appreciate where we are, but also embrace and strategies that push us to sustain and progress as a country. I cannot forget that 1955, the non-allied movement was also brought on front under the guidance of late Tito Bishop, and the subsequent conference that took place at Bandberg in Indonesia, purposely to champion the decolonization of Africa. In the African context, also two main fronts emerged in 1960s, the Casablanca Group and the Monrovia Group. We must remember that the Casablanca Group was in favor of the politically united Federation of African States immediately, whereas the Monrovia Group was a bit different from the other group, where these ones wanted a looser alliance based on gradual economic cooperation. I'm reminded, and I remind us all, that Casablanca Group, which included countries like Morocco, which was led by Hassan II. It was also including Egypt, led by Gamal Abdel Nasser. We also had Libya, led by Idris, not forgetting Ghana, led by Kwame Nkrumah, and Guinea, led by Sekou Toure, and of course Ethiopia and Mali. The objective of this group was to achieve the Pan-African political unification to defeat the colonialism under their slogan, Africa must unite. It is also important that we know that the Monrovia Group was a group of independent African state nations which shared a vision of the future of Africa and the Pan-Africanism in the early 1960s. This group comprised of the countries like Liberia, Nigeria, Senegal, Cameroon, and the Francophone, and most of the Francophone countries. You may ask yourself, where does Uganda belong? Belong to their first group, I believe. This believed that Africa independent states should cooperate and coexist in harmony without any political federation and deep integration, as opposed to their main rival, the Casablanca Group. They cherished independent states with a strong military and strong bureaucracies and economies. These two groups, the Casablanca and Monrovian, in 1963 united and established a formal content-wide organization, which we all know as the Organization of African Union. The global Pan-African outlook undoubtedly had an influential aspect to our own founding fathers of Uganda's independence struggle, which was in turn led by the following key figures in our own struggle for independence. These included, but not limited to, Ignatius Kangave Musazi, who formed the first political party in Uganda, and Uganda National Congress, UNC, in 1952, and assisted by the Bubakari Kachama Mayanja for Buganda. We cannot forget Stefano, and we cannot forget Yosefat. We cannot forget Bonne Okweredi. We cannot forget the SB Katembo of Toro, and many others that shaped our founded our independence. These were key founding fathers in as far as independence is concerned. Others were Sir William Wilberforce Ndayopi, who was part of the Ugandan delegation that went to the 1961 Lancaster Conference in England to advocate for independence. We cannot forget Benedicto Chwanka, who was the first Prime Minister of Uganda from 1st March 1962 to 30th April 1962. This is a reminder to all of us that the first Prime Minister actually was not Milton Obote, but was Benedicto Chwanka. And also we proceed to who was succeeded by Milton Obote. We cannot forget Semakula Mulumba, several were crushed with the colonial protectorate government officials in Entebbe and the British government officials in London while pursuing studies. As part of the crackdown of independence freedom fighters, the British government terminated his scholarship, and impressed by the eloquence, charisma, and the wealth of the knowledge. There are also many members that we're going to be talking about in this very important edition of UBC Ground Zero. We cannot forget the members of the Bataka Party who raised money and sent him back to England to complete his course, and many others. We cannot forget Gracie Binjira, who was the co-founder of UPC Party with Milton Obote in 1960s. And was also elected to Legislative Council in 1960s. We cannot forget William Wilberforce Rwetsba. We cannot forget John Kakonge. We cannot forget Tebirio Okeny, who joined the DP in 1959 pro-independence and participated as a representative of the Acholi and in London Constitutional Conference that wrote the Ugandan Constitution in 1962. And many others. We can not discuss the independence of Uganda without discussing some of characters and individuals who shaped our future, who were co-founding and founding fathers of this country. When the British handed Ugandan independence at Koro Independence Square, the Queen's representative, the Duke of Kent, handed over the constitutional instruments of independence to the executive prime minister, Milton Obote. Yeah. I remember those elders, if you're there and you remember that day, I know it was very important and historical and very memorable. We cannot forget the day when Sir Edward Mutesa II, then the Kabaka of Buganda Kingdom, who in 1963 was elected by the parliament to be the first president of Uganda, stood next to Obote during the ceremony, but this brotherhood was not the last since promised on a number of issues. They had a number of issues which separated them later on, but we must be happy and glad that independence started off on a very good agenda, and Uganda has charted a challenging journey economically, socially, and especially politically. We're going to be talking more of this in this very important program on how we got independence, on how this independence means to us, how we are self-rule, how we can sustain our independence, and how we can keep this very important progress as a country to make sure that we really embrace and uphold the self-rule. The other day we had the president signing the anti-homosexuality bill. That means we're politically independent, but we also love to know how economically we're independent, religiously, culturally, and many other aspects. This is UBC Ground Zero. We'll be bringing you a number of discussions. We'll be engaging a number of people. We're expecting very intellectual and vocal and also our elders to be joining us in this very important program. And you'll be joining us also on 0776 511 426, or you will be sending your message on 0701 24 26 47. Those are the numbers that you can be part of this very important edition of UBC Ground Zero. And I will be reading your messages, and I will be also receiving your calls. Where are you celebrating independence? How should we celebrate our independence? What does this independence mean to us? What can we take, or what are the strategies that we can take or embrace as a country to make sure that we sustain and progress or take charge, a full charge of our independence as a free nation, to take charge of our future. We are in this Sanja where we are saying we are securing our future. A very important program. We're going to have a very important discussion. We're going to see how we can self-sustain ourselves in tourism, in economy, in education. How about transport? How about energy? How about political self-rule? Very important to have our senior person, our senior minister, very intellectual, was one of the persons that we believe has shaped the politics of this country. They contributed much to see how far we have come and how far we are going. A big privilege and honor to have you on the show. Honorable Victoria Sekitoreko. I'm going for a very short break, and when I return, we're going to be starting off our discussion and our conversation on independence. I pray you don't go away.
Is born again, free and independent.
Did you know that Kanuti Akorimo was the first person to raise the Uganda flag? Major Kanuti Akorimo was the man who hoisted the Uganda flag as the Union Jack, also known as British flag, was lowered to mark the birth of the newly independent country, Uganda, on 9th October 1962. He was born in Omatenga village, Kumi district. Okarimo pursued a commercial course in Nairobi before joining the army. He also underwent training in England, where he was the only Ugandan. Okarimo helped in the formation of the Ugandan army under President Apollo Milton Obote. At the time Uganda became independent from the British, he was 32 years and a lieutenant. He retired from the army in 1967 at the rank of major and was awarded Heroes Medal in 2003. Retired Major Kanuti Okorimo died at Atutu Hospital in Komi District on the 22nd April 2020.
Long live Uganda for God and my country.
Uganda is born again, free and independent.
Did you know that George Wilberforce Kakoma composed the music and authored the lyrics of the Uganda national anthem? Kakoma was born in 1923 in what is now Wakiso District, Uganda's Mengo Town Council. He attended Mengo Primary School, King's College Woodoo, Royal College of Music in London, University of Durham in Northern England, among other institutions. Prior to Uganda's independence, a subcommittee was formed to determine an anthem for the forthcoming state. It proceeded to hold a nationwide contest with the criteria they stipulated for the anthem being that it should be short, original, solemn, praising and looking forward to the future. In July 1962, the committee chose Kakoma's composition. It had taken him a day to compose the music and write the lyrics for O Uganda, Land of Beauty. Kakoma's composition was first played publicly by the police band conducted by Mr. Mon on October 9, 1962, during Uganda's Independence Day celebrations. He received a personal token of 2,000 Ugandan shillings from the Prime Minister, Dr. Milton Obote, for his work. Apart from the national anthem, he contributed to the composition of the East African Community Anthem in 2005 and also composed the Uganda Wildlife Authority Anthem. Kakoma died on 8th April 2012 in Kampala's Kololo suburb, aged 89.
Long live Uganda for God and my country. Welcome to Ground Zero Season 2, a show that brings you in-depth discussion ranging from politics, health, finance, sports, and so much more. Ground Zero Season 2.
Indeed, this is UBC Ground Zero. Ampaire Amonotega is my name. We are live and clear on 98.0 FM, UBC Radio, and other platforms and other radio stations. We're also live and clear on Western Nile Radio, covering actually sub-region, Lango sub-region, Teso and Karamoja sub-regions. We're also live and clear on Butebo Radio, covering eastern parts of this country. We are live and clear on Magic 100 FM in central parts of this country. And this is UBC Radio. We are also streaming live on YouTube. You just enter UBC Ground Zero and you'll be part of this very important conversation. We're talking about independence. We're celebrating 61 years of independence. We are taking stock of what we have achieved as a country, and we are also appreciating how far we have gone, where we are now, and we are looking into the future, where we are going. We are looking at the sustaining unity and progress to take charge of our future as a free nation. What do we mean as a free nation? We're going to learn more of this in this very conversation. I have a very big privilege and honor to have Honorable Victoria Sectorico, who is a senior citizen, and a former Minister of Agriculture. We are glad to have you on the show, Honorable.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Interesting. We're discussing our independence. When we talk about independence, what comes into your mind, Honorable?
Actually, when we talk about independence, I think about the young people. Basically because for most of our young people, they have been alive only during our independence. That is one. Two, by the time you have brought up your own children and you are now dealing with grandchildren, the word independence changes a bit. You know, when a grandchild who totally depends on you thinks that because things have changed, now she's 18, so she's independent in your house, that is what comes to mind. That is one. Then two, when one of the reasons I think I still wake up every single day at 6 o'clock and start working is that to me independence means feeding oneself. In Busoga we have a saying, if somebody is being overbearing over you, you ask them, are you the one who feeds me? Because that is the only person who can order you around.
Indeed.
Yeah. So whenever we talk about independence, I keep asking, so is Uganda now fully independent? Are we feeding ourselves? Yeah.
Interesting. That's very important. We're talking about we're talking about sustaining our unity and progress to take charge of our future as a free nation.
Yeah.
Help us make meaning of this very theme of this year's celebration.
You see, one of the most difficult things to enforce is discipline if there is poverty in the mix. That is one. Two, for as long as there is no discipline, unity becomes a myth. So as we talk now, how many people are satisfied with Uganda? You know, if you were to do a street interview and ask everybody, are you happy to be a Ugandan? Has independence delivered? Are you a Ugandan or are you a Msoga before you are a Ugandan? I would love to hear those answers. Basically because if we are talking about unity, you know, like if you are going, if I can just use the analogy of holding hands, because unity, normally when the artists are showing it, they show people holding hands. But when some people are very short and others are very tall and others are very fat and all that, it becomes a bit difficult to hold these hands for any length of time. So, are we sustaining our unity? First and foremost, there has to be peace in your heart, peace in your household. Then that household becomes part of peace in the village. Then the village becomes part of peace in the parish, the sub-county, the district. And once you have peace of mind, which you can only have if you have got enough to eat, you have got somewhere to stay, you have got clothing, you know, those basics. Is everybody having these basics? It is that type of question which I normally ask myself, which I actually asked myself when I was reading about this. Because the day before, about 2 days back, UBC TV was showing some people where the minister, maybe it was last week, where the minister had to go and sort out land issues, and these people were homeless. So how do you expect that person who is homeless or who is not sure of his next meal, or if tomorrow, if she will wake up and she has somewhere to lie down, how do you expect her to be part of the unity? So, can we sustain our unity? First of all, before you sustain anything, you should have it. Do we have unity?
Interesting. Honorable, the people who still believe that if we remained with the colonial government, we would have achieved more as a country compared to when we received this independence. We received a very important treasure, but we did not realize what we had received. And so we took it for granted, and that's how we missed.
I don't think we took it for granted as such. Having been in government, I'll tell you this. It takes time to learn to be government. Because some of these things, when we are growing up in our homes and whatever, they will tell you, in this home, we do things this way. That one is not done here. So you grow up knowing the boundaries. Now, 1962 comes and Ugandans are told to go and vote. They had never voted. Because sometimes when I am interacting with the British, some of who are my really good friends, I look at them and wonder what their grandparents had in mind. Because if they really, really wanted us to be democratic, they were here for a long time. How come all those years we were not given a chance to practice? We did not there's nobody in Uganda who will tell you that they grew up with democracy. The only thing we knew is having our kings in some cases and our chiefs in other cases who we respected. Now, bring in democracy. You are going to vote. Okay, the 60s, 70s, whatever, there was a semblance of elections. But I think the last nail in the coffin came from LC elections. And I'll tell you why. Because we grew up with the chiefs and the kings and the chiefs, and we actually respected them. We had grown up knowing that that is how things are done. Now, when we were told to go and elect LCs, and of course, when NRM had just come, they took a long time explaining what elections are, LCs are, and so on, and how you are going to be self-governing and all that. That is when some people discovered that we can now get rid of anybody who has been pumping sense into this village. If you are drink mates, you elect your drink mate, and then you can live happily ever after. You go to a place like Karamoja. In Karamoja, you cannot be a chief if you are poor. In fact, when and if my daughter is getting married, the first person I have to tell is the chief, because he's going to be the first person to contribute to the wedding of my daughter. It is not the other way around. You could never have been a chief in Karamoja when you are poor. Now,
Isn't that leaving out capable and potential leaders?
Exactly. But that is what has happened everywhere. In Uganda, when you are a chief or Mamwakawaka, oh my God, there are things you just don't do. But these days with these LCs, I remember recently in our village, we were going to elect our LC chairperson, LC1 chairperson. And this man who does not even stay in the village turned up saying, oh, they have said. Fortunately, our village is known for very educated people who stand up for themselves, because we have got many judges there, traders and all that. And of course, we stood up to him. But in some places, especially the educated, don't turn up to vote. So the drink mates go there and vote.
And represent.
Exactly. And then we pretend that that is democracy. So when you say, would it have been better if we had stayed with the colonials? Certainly not. You know, I used to be so neutral. I used to be a nice person before I worked with the United Nations. When you get out of Uganda and you work with the United Nations and look at, participate in boardrooms where international decisions are being taken, and you see how your country is contributing or not contributing, that is when you wake up and say, oh my God, aren't we dead? So, going back to the colonists, don't make me fall sick. I just, even the It's music. So no way. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But also, Honorable,
Yes.
people still believe that 61 years is not little time. It's too much time that we would have used to transform, develop ourselves as a country. But it seems we're still taking baby steps. Where did we go wrong?
No, you know, when you have children, let's say if a parent has 5 children, some will be girls, others will be boys, some will be tall, short, fat, and whatever. And then some will start walking at 10 months, some will not walk until 2 years later. So Uganda seems to be one of those which is going to walk 2 years later.
Interesting. Thank you, Honorable. We've been joined by Dr. Nyakala, a very big privilege and to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I was held up a bit. It's a pleasure to see Honorable. Last week we were together at UMI on the public policy dialogue. It's always a pleasure to meet you. Yeah, we have a lot to learn from you. Yeah, thank you.
Doctor, a warm welcome.
Thank you.
We're talking about independence.
Yeah.
We're talking about sustaining unity and progress to take charge of our future as a free nation. When I just asked Honorable before you came, when we mentioned the word Independence Day, when in the context of Uganda, what comes into her mind, and she shared her story, I would love to also know from your side, when we mentioned Independence Day, independence celebrations and anniversary, what comes into your mind as a senior citizen?
Yeah, my name is Tom Wanyakala. I happen to be a lecturer of public policy and governance at Uganda Management Institute, but I was also a civil servant from 1986 to 2009, and that's when I retired from government to join academia. But I was born around the time of independence. I was born 1963. So my mother here knows more about independence than me. But I could also boast that I'm an independence product. I did a bit of history. And we know that as Africans, we were colonized for almost 8 or so years in the case of Uganda. And there's a lot of things that went on. Because before the colonials came, Uganda didn't exist at all. So in 1885, they sent in Berlin, and they just divided us by drawings, to the extent that now, next week, we are inaugurating our Mukuka, the traditional leader of Amasava. But we are inviting our brothers from Kenya, from Bungoma, and so all those are Amasava.
We'll have to get passports to come.
No, because of the South African community nowadays, we don't need the passports, just an ID is enough. So I think those divisions brought a lot of problems for us. As much as colonials may have had its advantages also in terms of bringing education, maybe some modern methods of agriculture, and also bringing the semblance of modern administration and so on. Apart from the traditional administrations that we had, it brought a lot of problems for us, because it seems it was not geared at developing us at all. It was geared at exploiting our resources. You remember we had those copper mines like in Kilembe, and also we had cash crops like cotton and also coffee and so on, all those for export, and most of the advantages went to the colonial masters. That's how they managed to make themselves more developed than us. So when there was that struggle for independence, of course we know of the Uganda National Congress and the democratic parties. They existed, they were part of the struggle. The Uganda National Congress and so on, with the leaders like Musasi's and so on. When people struggled for independence, we thought that things could be better, because we thought that now, since the colonials were not determined to make us better, but they were just determined to take advantage of us by taking away our resources, we as Africans could manage our resources better. But whether there's evidence as to whether we have managed those resources better is something that we need to interrogate. But I think we have seen some positive developments since independence. We are now have improved the road infrastructure that is ongoing. Although my coming here late, maybe that in the Kampala we need to do more in terms of traffic jams and so on. Maybe we need more flyovers, we need more trains which can make people move. If I was in New York, I was in Birmingham University for my PhD from 2002 to 2005. but I could make an appointment and be there on time because the train every 2 minutes.
Is it
So, yeah, I thought because I've just passed. I went to the market near Namave and I saw the rail system is being made. I think we shall be there. So I think there are some achievements which have been made.
Do you think in Independence Bed some fruits we have realized some fruits?
Even ourselves were products of education. Myself, I happen to be a public servant, and God used me to restructure the telecommunications sector. I was actually on the annex official member on the board of Uganda Post and Telecommunications Corporation, and I was seconded to Ministry of Finance in 1994 up to 2000, and I was involved in restructuring Uganda Post and Telecommunications Corporation into successor entities, the Uganda Telecom, the Uganda Post, Post Bank, the Training School, Uganda Communications Commission. But as of now, I was involved in telecommunications restructuring, and I can boast that I'm right now moving with 4 telephone sets. And yet in 1988, I was on the board of directors of UPTC, but I applied for a landline in my place in Wege, and it took me 5 years. So from 88 to 1993, Engineer Patrick Masambo, the MD, then rang me after 5 years. Oh, Tom, at last we have got your landline in your place in Wege. And around the Kazinga, Hassan Trobi Primary School, I was one of the first people. But now, right now, you can just walk on the street, even online, you'll just get a line. And so there have been some improvements to that extent. And I think I also was on the frequency National Frequency Registration Board, which is now Uganda Communications Commission. The first radios which I licensed to, like Sanyo, Impact Radio, Capital Radio, and so on. As of now, we have a plethora of radios to the extent that even when I go to Mbala and I'm talking about our Masava issues, we have over about 20 radios in Mbala town. So in terms of communication, it's easy. As right now, even we are communicating with so many people, which is used not to be the case. Because at that time when we privatized the radios, they said, oh, wherever there's a military coup, people make announcements on radio. But since we liberalized and we have so many radios, have we ever had that? So that was just a fear. Even the privatization of telecommunications, we thought that some people were thinking that it was Uganda Post and Telecommunications, which was a public enterprise, which was managing those telephone lines, and it could keep even government secrets. But as of now, we have MTN, we have Airtel and all that, and I don't think there's any much fear about that. So I think things have become good in one or another. Even in terms of education, I think now, like in 1980s, we used to have one university in Makerere. But as of now, we have so many universities. And I think that also in terms of education, we have improved amidst the challenges. So I think overall, it's a work in progress. And I think independence, to me, is worthwhile. But even if there are things that we cannot manage well as ourselves, but I think with the time we can learn. Because I remember countries like Singapore, those East Asian tigers. Lee Kuan Yew came in 1964 to go around Africa, to tour around the African countries. And you saw some of the best practices. For example, in Uganda, we had the basic cooperative system. Myself, I was a beneficiary of this cooperative union. It paid for my bursaries from senior 1 up to senior 6. That is in Masaba Secondary School, from 1978 to 1984 before I proceeded to Makerere. But even when I was in Makerere, Bugis Cooperative Union was still helping me. So we had a good cooperative system, and these are some of the issues that those East Asian countries learned from what we're doing to make what they are. They are now ahead of us. But I think we can learn lessons from what we are doing and still improve our situation.
Thank you, Doctor. Before you came also, Honorable mentioned about unity, which is also in our theme for this year, celebrations. We have a challenge. We cannot move forward unless we are united. But how can we move forward when we are still divided in our tribes, in our regions, in our cultures, and no one is proud to be Ugandan? We don't have Ugandans, but we have the Bamasaba, we have Waganda, we have Banyankole. Honorable said that if you asked anyone you met on the streets and you said, who are you? You would probably say, I am Muganda, born from Masaka, or I am Mgisu, born from anywhere. until when we're celebrating 61 years, when are we going to have Ugandans?
Yeah, like myself, as a culprit, when I came here, the first thing was to mention about my identity of being a Mugisu. but that identity of mine, I am just proud of being a Mumasabo Mugisu, just because we are part of Uganda. And I think even that Mugisu Cooperative Union I've praised so much. During Idi Amin's time, the economy was limping, but it was Arabica coffee from Mbale, which was what? Making us go limp on. Because as much as we sometimes even we used to smuggle some to Kenya because the prices were low. But I think it was one of the biggest earners of government revenue in terms of even foreign exchange. Even at the time when we got independence, by the way, this Bukis Cooperative Union and the Masaka Cooperative Union and so on, when the 1962 during the Lancaster Conference, the Bazungu challenged us that do you have enough money to sustain independence? And by then the Bukis Cooperative Union had someone on the bank account in London and New York, and also Masaka Cooperative and Majankolo Quetel and so on. So these are positive things that we had, and I think we should sustain so that we can do better. But at the same time, as much as we are talking about tribalism and people identifying themselves, I think there's this concept of being one amidst diversity. We can be different. But for example, now with intermarriages, I marry, my in-laws are from Toro, Fort Potro, whatever. And I myself, I worked in the public service. I was in the midst of works from 1987 up to 2007. And I've worked with the Honorable Rugundas, the Honorable Nasasiras, the Honorable Rebecca Kadagas, the Letiki Vejinjas, so many ministers and the bosses as permanent secretaries, the Chelsea Mugans and so on. And I tend to relate with them well. And even at Uganda Management Institute, where I'm teaching, I have very good close friends from Western Uganda, Northern Uganda, and so on. And I think it is about nation building, because we need to develop a consensus that as much as the colonialists forced us into this into being Uganda, we can use it to our advantage. In the first instance, for example, if you refer to Winston Churchill, when he came in 1909 in his book, he said he's the one who christened us as the Pile of Africa. And I've traveled a lot globally. Those 20 years I was in the Ministry of Works because I was the one coordinating the restructuring of telecommunications sector. So through International Telecommunication Union, I would do almost every month or every week or going for conference and so on. But when you compare other countries with Uganda, God has blessed us with almost everything. Fertile soil, rain, nice weather. You have my neighbors. I come from Bulambuli. Although my father comes from Manafa, but our immediate neighbors in Karamoja, they literally move without dressing too much, like some of us were suffocating in the ties and the coats and so on. But they look healthy. So we are, I think, failed to take advantage of those resources that God has given us, and maybe these are related to resolving our governance or leadership-related issues. To say that we work as a nation together, we develop a common consensus, and we, as a country, so that as a country we can move ahead.
Honorable Secretary, by 1962 or 1960s, Indonesia and Singapore, that Dr. Wanyankara just mentioned, were in the same stage or same level, economic level, or even worse compared to Uganda. But now we can get some help from these two countries, yet we were ahead of them. What went wrong, and how best can we revise ourselves to take our mantle?
That word help should get out of the vocabulary of Uganda. We are really well endowed. But let me first comment a bit on what the doctor had just said. You know, that business of Churchill came here and called Uganda the Pearl of Africa. For us women, when you have a child, you have all sorts of names. When a passing visitor says, "Oh, what a beautiful girl," you don't change her name. So I'm glad we remained Uganda. So for me, I'm one of those people who is not very proud of what Churchill said, especially looking at what he did to Africa, Uganda, and his own country.
You only perceived it as a statement.
Yeah, so I just leave it.
A comment,
Yes.
not a name.
Yes, I just leave it in passing.
Interesting.
So be that as it may, I want to talk about why those countries have left us behind, Singapore and South Korea and all that. The doctor was talking about education. And of course, if you want to develop, definitely you have to have proper education. So we have been having education. And many countries, going back to the word help which you used, many countries have been helping, quote and unquote, Uganda by offering us scholarships. Send your children to come and study this, study the other. And of course, I remember the late Governor Bank of Uganda, Dr. Mtebide, he was so proud of having gone to the London School of Economics. Once again, going back to what I saw when I was abroad, most of these countries know what they want from Uganda. So when they bring these scholarships, they will take you into those areas which will not disturb their interests. Like whenever, in fact, starting tomorrow, you read any country which is offering scholarships, you see that they normally don't give an open book and say, we have got so much money, Uganda, where are your priorities? Never. For the longest time, we have been getting scholarships in traditional subjects like agriculture, engineering, health, specifically going for the pharmacists. And for me, that is where the pain is. What these wonderful people who have been giving us scholarships to train our doctors, the professors in Makerere and all that, is for them to brainwash them and tell them that until and unless we have said it is okay, it is not okay. If for you are a pharmacist, unless that medicine has been stamped from London or from New York, then it cannot work. That is why I was so excited, and until now I carry the excitement of Covidex. When this gentleman, Mr. Gwang, Dr. Gwang, came out with Covidex, and our president woke up to say, we are going to use this Covidex, and we actually used it, and it worked, and it wiped words from everybody who was a naysayer. I felt like, yeah, that's the Uganda I'm talking about. So back to Singapore and other countries which are ahead of us, they handled their education, they knew what their priorities are, and they stuck with them. As we talk now, for example, this, you remember we had the agrarian reform, we had the industrial revolution, we had the digital revolution. This century is for creatives. How many universities do we have in Uganda where you teach creatives? If your child is in senior 1, 2, 3 and wants to become a creative, which university are you aiming at? None. Basically because we have never been taught how to see a creative child, how to nurture a creative child, because creatives normally perform as individuals. It is not hereditary. This child will just wake up with this talent and there you are. But it has been happening ever since the world started. There are those people who sometimes are called outliers. Other countries have really perfected the art of seeing them. Like Malaysia has a school where they take these children from kindergarten. That is when they identify them. You go through senior secondary school. They don't care whether your parent is rich or not, because you are a country treasure. The country actually looks after you, and before you know it, you are up there. But in Uganda, when we started MDD, our detractors were the ones leading, calling them Musiru Dala Dala. Then when and if you ask your child, so you are at Makerere, what are you studying? As I'm doing pottery. Pottery? Your grandfather did pottery and we didn't get anywhere. And now you are doing pottery. I mean, most of this crockery we import from China comes from pottery and art. Do we have a school where we are majoring in that? How come 61 years later I still have to import my cup from abroad, in spite of all the clay we have here? So, back to
who is failing us? Is it the private sector or government?
I think both, because now that I'm a director at the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, after being a minister in the government, I now know what went wrong. You know, when we were doing the privatization, and we said this and this and the other should be done by the private sector, there was never a conference, even as we talk now, We normally don't have a conference between government of Uganda and the private sector where they say for this year, this is what government is handing over to private sector. That is one. Two, when things are being handed over to the private sector, there is no name. It is just generally. So there is no accounting that Mr. Wanyakala, we gave you this UMI, you are supposed to do ABCD. How far have you gone? Because even if they are not funding you, you are part of the economy.
We set priorities and targets.
Exactly. So after you set the priorities and the targets, it is important to talk to your partner and say, okay,
evaluate.
I expected you to be producing enough onions. Where are they? Then
what is the problem?
Exactly.
How can we come in?
Exactly. Then, like right now, we are having a very good problem. Nearly every single week, there is a huge delegation from different countries coming here in order to trade with Uganda. Whenever I participate in these meetings, the trade summits, they are really after buying our crops. What I find interesting, though, is that in quite a number of cases, you find a number of government people there who have no food to sell, and then the people with the food are not there. Not even the traders, because sometimes we don't like middlemen, but they have a big role there. So the farmers who are to produce the food to be sold are not there. The traders who are supposed to move the food to that destination are not there. The government is there. Then they come back saying, oh yeah, that was a successful summit. Now and I'm like, what are you going to sell? Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, Honorable. Interesting moment. This is UBC Ground Zero. We're live on 4 radio stations covering entire Uganda, Western Nile covering northern parts and Western Nile and Karamoja's Aboriginals. We're also live and clear on Butebo radio in eastern parts of Uganda, Magic 100 FM in central parts of this country, and this is UBC radio covering entire Uganda. We're also streaming live on YouTube. Just enter UBC Ground Zero and you'll be part of this important conversation. Keep sending your messages on 0701 24 26 47 or call us on 0776 511 426. What do you think needs to be done to sustain and progress, to take charge of our future as a free nation? Dr. Wanyakala, we talked about she was mentioning the role of government and private sector. We need to have a functioning private sector by empowering and supporting it. But how can we? Where is the problem? How come we are not realizing these priorities that we set? Who is failing who? Is it the private sector? Is it the government? How best can we bring the two to do and realize these targets that we have set as a country?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to respond from the perspective of education. She observed that in some countries, and I think I'm aware of some, like Germany, Finland, and so on, they always identify the talents earlier, and then develop them. If you're good at football, if you're a good dancer, whatever, you're a good engineer, whatever, they will nurture you from that perspective. And I think with Finland, I think was of late they are known that children go at 8 or 9 to school, and by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at most, they are busy doing other activities that for their own personal development. But sometimes when I go in the morning, I come to Uganda Management Institute, usually to beat the jam by 6 or 6:30. You find our children being whether it's raining or whatever, and then they come back in the night at around 8 or so through this jam and so on. So, and I think that is connected to the element of privatization of education, because now schools compete for grades.
Exactly.
And yet, when I joined the academia, I started teaching after when I came back from UK in 2011. I was at Uganda Christian University up 2016. Those 5 years. I could see that sometimes even these very good triple A's, I don't want to mention the schools, but they are not reflected in at the undergraduate level. You find them, these ones who have struggled with the E's, the weak, whatever, are the ones who are performing. Even I think the same thing at one time, some like for me, I was among the first those who started the A-levels in the 1980s in the Masaba Secondary School. In some subjects, we could finish the S5 and S6 without having a teacher, because those were called the third world schools. So, but you could come with you could come with your 3 principles in Makerere, either the D's or E's and so. But with the first class and upper second. Anyway, but I think the point is that sometimes I think education is a public good, and we need to identify the priorities and also take into account that these are younger people. They should be nurtured in the right direction. They shouldn't be exposed so much to cram work for the purpose of passing exams. Exams are just a by the way of assessing someone, but they should not be an end in itself, because we have what we call summative ways of evaluating. At the end of the child, even if someone has attended primary 7, what skills, what livelihood skills are going to help that child to live a better life? Not just because someone has scored Division 1 and we should celebrate and whatever. Then at the end of the day, like now we have so many people with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. In fact, I just discovered that the border whom I used because the jump from Wegele was so much. He told me that he has a bachelor's degree.
And
I don't know how the bachelor's degree to drive the motorcycle. But that is in terms of education. I think just remind me a bit about the way you stated the question.
But how best can we empower the private sector to meet the goals that we have set as a country?
Yeah. So I'm happy Madam is now the director of the private sector, whatever, and she foundation. And I also myself participated in privatization of telecommunications and the transport sector. But it is true that we didn't have a consensus, because in the 1980s and 1970s, we had a bit of challenges. There was an economic crisis and so on. So the World Bank or the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and so on, sat and thought that the public sector was rather too big and we could not afford. And for example, Uganda, by then we had the Uganda Electricity Board, Uganda Post and Telecommunications, Uganda Hotels, so many of these corporations. And by the way, we even had I think Uganda Bati, Uganda Bata. We didn't use it to this Mivumba, although the population was still young. So there's a public enterprise we are helping, and I think the support of Uganda Development Bank to provide some services that the private sector wouldn't. But now the problem comes again. When it came to privatization, when you privatize too. In Uganda, I think we have a very bad record. As of now, Madam, I don't know whether you can mention some 5 local capitalists in the terms of industry and whatever. I think the only one we used to have was Mrwana. This other one who died about 2 months ago, I think, was involved in some milk, whatever. So I think even when we privatized, like MTN and Airtel and so on, we literally surrendered our economy to the foreign
investors. And
like now, when it came to Uganda Communications Commission, when they were negotiating, they put in a clause that when they make profits and they pay taxes, they have the leeway to repatriate their profits. And as of now, you find that now the telecommunications sector is the drain. As much as the services have improved, now I can send some little money to my father in the village and whatever, we can communicate and so on. But even sometimes people put data, because we have a weekly consumer organizational capability. So people we are making these private operators who are foreign are taking advantage of what of us to, and people are so hooked on telephones. Someone would rather miss even a meal or even to buy Gichako, but most of the time people are hooked on WhatsApp and all that. Which is not bad in itself, because communication is very important. But I think if it becomes a habit that people should communicate even where need is, of course, even our children are being exposed to things like pornography and all that, and the access of these sorts of information, and even people are using these telephones to do a lot of to be involved in crime, like people losing their money on phones. People accessing the PIN numbers and all that. Okay. So all those are challenges. But I think we need to revisit some of these arrangements so that we develop a middle class and also our own capitalist class. That's why in Kenya, recently in Kenya, when those riots or whatever, the Kenyan capitalists came and said, if we have chaos, we are going to lose out. So if we have more capitalists within our midst who have a lot of stakes in our stability and security, I think that is the way for us to go.
Interesting. Doctor, before I let you go, liberalization, by the time we embraced it, was it a blessing or a disguise?
Yeah, in fact, I didn't involve that point because when it came as structural adjustment programs, because we are borrowing from this World Bank and so on, they said unless you restructure and liberalize. So it was more of a top-down approach. For them, they think globally the public enterprise is corrupt and it cannot perform. It creates unnecessary unemployment, which is not productive. So they recommended that we restructure, lay off people, and sell off the public enterprise or liquidate those who are underperforming. And I think that liberalization, as much as in some areas like telecommunications,
is it where we lost it all?
Led some improvement. But I think somehow we have lost it out because we ended up losing like the Nile, which was making this
the cooperative which educated you.
Yeah, the cooperatives collapsed. Even the Tetron Uganda butter now we are putting on Mvumba shoes and whatever. So even things like matchboxes were being made in Uganda. Now we import from China. Even these razor blades. We had the Nasset, you remember, and the Comet. Being locally made here, even hose. When I was in Ministry of Works, I was in charge of procurement for these instruments which we could use for road maintenance, like spades, sulurus, and so on. I used to go to Chillington, Ginger, with our trucks, and we load and so on. So all those local things also were undermined as a result of liberalization.
Honorable Secretary Code, do you still believe or support the idea that we bring back these cooperatives and we go away with the liberalization?
The two are not mutually exclusive. That is one. Two, the beauty of liberalization was that the rest of the public could actually participate in the economy. What seems to have gone wrong, though, is that people, especially in the public sector, in quite a number of cases, didn't understand what their role was. For about 10 years, Late Mulwana was being harassed by people from the Ministry of Industry, basically because he had set up Uganda batteries, and they were saying it is a monopoly. We definitely have to break this monopoly. I remember talking to one high-level person in that ministry, and I asked him, Kudiruchi, what is in it for you when you break this monopoly and bring in maybe an Asian or whatever in order to compete with Mulwana? What is in it for you? So I could just see that he was misinformed and maybe just being mean, and I'm glad to inform you that he didn't win. Eventually he lost the job and Mulwana continued making the Uganda batteries. But having said that, you know, when Mr. Dr. Onyakala was talking about telecommunications, earlier I had talked about creatives. One of the areas which is definitely needed by the creatives is telecommunications. As we talk now, when I came in, I had you playing a song. As I was coming in, my phone was ringing, and I have a song which I play on my phone. But these telecommunications are not paying the artists. And what I have now come to understand is that the artists don't know exactly. No, we do not have a clear system through which the artists can actually earn from their creativity. But having taken time to understand why this is happening, because other countries are already earning a lot. In the US, most of the rich people are from the creatives. Why we are not doing it here? It's because even the people in government don't understand what we are talking about. They don't know what part of, if this is an elephant, where is the face and where is the tail? So the beauty of the creatives is that they are creatives. They create the content. Now, the job of the government is to create the infrastructure, but you can't build what you don't know. So, as a result, when my Dr. Engineer colleague here says we privatize the telecommunications, they are making a killing, but they are also killing our creatives. So, if we are independent and these creatives are contributing during this century of the creatives towards Uganda's economy, is it possible for us to prioritize? Let us understand, let us prioritize, and let us make sure that we deliver, because it is not very difficult. For example, we are on YouTube. If you are watching us on YouTube, I want you to know that not many Ugandans know how to benefit from what they put on YouTube. So what would I like to see? What I would like to see now that we are independent is for Uganda to realize what riches, what wealth Uganda has, and actually go ahead and benefit from it.
All right.
You know, we are independent, but then most of the films we watch in Uganda are from outside. A lot of music, in fact, many radio stations, if you can just get off UBC a little bit and switch on any radio station, you hear them playing songs from outside Uganda. What is supposed to be done is for a system to be set up where everybody who is playing a foreign song actually pays a tax, and that tax goes to government. That is done everywhere. So that is number one. Then number two, these people who are, because I told you they are creatives, they only create content. They don't go and create the radio, that phone, or whatever. So government has to take off time, sit down and understand this particular industry. Because we are independent, we should be where other independent countries are. Having said that, yeah, what was your next your question before I started commenting on the
should we get rid of liberalization, or it is too late for us?
Say that again.
Should we get rid of liberalization, or it is too late for us?
Oh, you are. So having told you that, if you are a creative, would you still be asking if we should get rid of liberalization? We are just arriving, and all I'm saying is, can we arrive as a team? You remember we started with unity.
Yes.
Can private sector and public sector hold hands and arrive into this sector of creatives and making lots of money? Let me give one little example which I think it can make it easier for everybody to understand why I'm going on and on like this. I am a farmer's daughter. I studied agriculture. Everything about me is agriculture. But one of the best things that ever happened in Uganda ever since I was born is Rolex. Why? You know, at one time during the 2018, Uganda alone would eat a minimum of 500,000 eggs a day. That was fantastic news for us farmers. The chicken farmers had a market for their eggs. The maize farmers, the soybean farmers had a fantastic market because they were feeding the chicken. Everybody who had set up a chicken muchomo, everybody who was setting up a Rolex, and so on and so forth, and it was
the tomatoes, exactly. The onions,
it was a balanced
oil.
Yes, it was a balanced meal, because right now there is a project coming up, that look at our nutrition. These Rolex creators, which comes from creatives, had actually come up with this. So that is what I would like to see. I don't want us to continue with the old agriculture. Let us be creative.
Interesting. This is UBC Ground Zero, and we are talking about sustaining unit and progress to take charge of our future as a free nation. We've been talking about economic independence, if I may call it, and when I return, I'll be reading your messages and receiving your calls on 0776 511 426, or send your messages on 0701 24 26 47. I'm coming after this very important break. I pray that you don't go away. We're coming just in a bit.
This is Ground Zero Season 2. Stay tuned. We shall be right back.
Uganda is born again, free and independent.
Did you know that Kanuti Akorimo was the first person to raise the Uganda flag? Major Kanuti Akorimo was the man who hoisted the Uganda flag as the Union Jack, also known as British flag, was lowered to mark the birth of the newly independent country, Uganda, on 9th October 1962. He was born in Omatenga village, Kumi district. Okarimo pursued a commercial course in Nairobi before joining the army. He also underwent training in England, where he was the only Ugandan. Okarimo helped in the formation of the Ugandan army under President Apollo Milton Obote. At the time Uganda became independent from the British, he was 32 years and a lieutenant. He retired from the army in 1967 at the rank of major and was awarded Heroes Medal in 2003. Retired Major Kanuti Okorimo died at Atutu Hospital in Komi District on the 22nd April 2020.
Long live Uganda for God and my country.
Uganda is born again, free and independent.
Did you know that George Wilberforce Kakoma composed the music and authored the lyrics of the Uganda national anthem? Kakoma was born in 1923 in what is now Wakiso District, Uganda's Mengo Town Council. He attended Mengo Primary School, King's College Budo, Royal College of Music in London, University of Durham in Northern England, among other institutions. Prior to Uganda's independence, a subcommittee was formed to determine an anthem for the forthcoming state. It proceeded to hold a nationwide contest with the criteria they stipulated for the anthem being that it should be short, original, solemn, praising and looking forward to the future. In July 1962, the committee chose Kakoma's composition. It had taken him a day to compose the music and write the lyrics for O Uganda, Land of Beauty. Kakoma's composition was first played publicly by the police band conducted by Mr. Moon on October 9, 1962, during Uganda's Independence Day celebrations. He received a personal token of 2,000 Ugandan shillings from the Prime Minister, Dr. Milton Obote, for his work. Apart from the national anthem, he contributed to the composition of the East African Community Anthem in 2005 and also composed the Uganda Wildlife Authority Anthem. Kakoma died on 8th April 2012 in Kampala's Kololo suburb, aged 89.
Long live Uganda for God and my country. Welcome back. Ground Zero Season 2 continues.
Welcome back from that very short break. Kampaire Amon Otega is my name, and this is UBC Ground Zero. We are on 4 radio stations covering entire Uganda. We are live on Western Nile radio. We are live and clear on Butebo radio. We are live and clear on Magic 100 FM, and we are also live and clear on UBC radio, and also on other our platforms like YouTube. You just put UBC Ground Zero and you'll be part of us. We have a very big privilege and honor to have in the studios of UBC Honorable Victoria Secretarico, who's the former Minister of Agriculture and also a director in Private Sector Foundation. We also have a big privilege and honor to have Dr. Tom Alfred Wanyakara. Is the lecturer of governance and public policy at Uganda Management Institute. We're talking about sustaining unit and progress to take charge of our future as a free nation. Allow me read some of your messages. Someone from Arua, Jackson, Arua says, we can discuss the progress of the country. We can't discuss the progress of our country without discussing some characters or individuals in the country who were the founding fathers of this independence that we are celebrating, like Milton Obote, Gracie Binjira, and many others. May them long live. And also someone, Bega from Nakaselo, says, thank you, Honorable Secretarico. It has been a while not feeding from your plate of wisdom, education, and information. Thank you for educating this generation. Also, someone, Umar Kamoga, you are in Bukoto. You wrote Butoko, and you say thank you, Dr. Wanyakara. You seem to be have served in different institutions of government, and you have served this country in different capacities. But what do people like you leave behind for the next generations to embrace and uphold, and to know that you ever served this country as servants, but also as patriots? Katsabe says, we are gifted by God. We are destroying what we are given. These are natural endowments by ourselves. Our children and grandchildren might miss so much on a number of things that we are destroying us ourselves, like environment, the climate. Dr. Nyakara mentioned the good climate, but if you walked on the streets of Kampala, everyone is littering plastic everywhere. I'm going to keep reading these messages. Go back to the studios. We have finished the economic part of it, unless you have anything to reply to these concerns from the people who are listening to us. Honorable?
No, let the doctor go first.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to appreciate that I'm myself privileged to benefit from Honorable's conversation. And I think also that appreciation about having been a public servant. I think to us who joined the civil service in the 1980s, serving in government was not a business. It was like it was a to be a public servant. And I think that's why some of us, like I was congratulating Madam that having been a minister, whatever, you are still someone who we can hardly throw a stone. So these are the role model. It's the role modeling. I was a civil servant. As I told you, I was involved in so many things, privatizing the telecommunications sector. But I think what I leave behind as a legacy is that, please, when you are asked to do a government job, it's a honor. Do it for the benefit of the nation. Yeah, and that's why when I'm teaching in a class, I say, oh, I participated in the privatization of telecom, but my name didn't appear anywhere that I was involved in this licensing or these radios. Some people were being tempted and so on. But I think if we had that heart, it would really help us to fight things like corruption, which are really making whatever programs, the government programs that we have in place fail. So it revolves around the servant leadership. And patriotism really and nationalism. For example, I said Bugisu Cooperative Union gave me bursaries from S1 to senior 6, including when I was in Makerere, they would help me in terms of some facilitation. So now, supposing they hear that now all of a sudden I was doing things, would that be a good cooperative responsibility? And would I also be maybe being welcomed here if we had seen my name being splashed in newspapers about funny issues and all that? So I think as a public servants, that is the main issue that can even help us to build a nation. If we bring on board things like the telecommunications, which are helping everybody and people see value in it, I think that's the best way to go as an independent country. Although we have said that in terms of liberalizing the telecommunications, we need to still do more work so that we can involve the nationals in these operations. But I think you asked a question earlier on about that can we do without liberalization. I think it is too late, because Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, the Prime Minister, whom I admire so much, for him he said, with the communism, capitalism, that was not his business. Whatever the private sector can do best, let it be done by the private sector. And I think the examples where the private sector has excelled, like telecoms, amidst, with the exception of some of those problems we are talking about. Then, but also the public sector can do well. I think it was a mistake for us to privatize everything because of those conditionalities from the World Bank and so on. Because we have an institution like National Water and Sewerage Corporation. That's the one I did my PhD research on. Okay. And it's a public enterprise 100%. But by the time I started the research there in 2002, they were operating only in 90 towns. But as of now, they're operating in 275 towns, the whole of Uganda. Even in my place in Bulambule, I can access national water. Right. So public enterprises can also do well. And I think even the commercial bank we did was a mistake. We couldn't have got rid of Uganda Commercial Bank because the money is in the economy should be controlled by the nationals. But if we leave the banking sector to stand big and whatever, ABSA and all that, I think it is a risk. Although, of course, I like the way centennial banks are coming up, Well, it was unfortunate. Ukraine Bank lost out and so on. I think we should have Housing Finance Post Bank also playing a big role in our financial sector.
Thank you,
because
Doctor.
sometimes it becomes difficult. If foreigners are controlling, then we can't control inflation, and it can distort the whole economy.
Thank you, Doctor. Time is not on our side. Honorable.
Okay, if I can just make one comment about what the doctor has said and your question. Really, and of course the caller who said they have not heard from me and they like listening to me, I want to inform everybody that I am me because I was properly prepared. When we went to school during those days, of course these were all government schools, the teachers were teachers. They were there from 7 to 7. They gave us homework, they marked the homework, they were remunerated, they were paid on time, they were housed in quite a number of cases. So, asking this question today, when yesterday I was really listening to the news and hearing that the circle of the teachers has been facilitated with 29 billion shillings. The question I ask as a former banker, because when I was a banker and you applied for a loan, let's say to grow tomatoes, I would ask exactly who is going to manage this farm. If you were not going to be there 24/7, you wouldn't get the loan. So if you are a teacher, bringing up those rowdy teenagers, you have only one teenager in the house and it is hell. Now you are in charge of 100 of them, whether they are 5 years, 15 years, still they are rowdy. Now you have got to spend the whole day with them in order for you to make sure that you are shaping them the way some of us were shaped. But then you have got to run home and go and milk the cow in order to deliver the milk. Otherwise, you will not get the money for your rent. So for us, so I was brought up in these fantastic schools and I thank the government of that day and all that. But then after that, I became minister. This one, I want to tell everybody, especially who is in cabinet now, for us, who went into cabinet in the 80s, for me particularly, I spent 2 years as deputy minister. And during that time, we actually were being coached in order to become ministers. During those days, there was no way you would just wake up from the bank where I was working and tomorrow you are a full minister. No. So
you have to be oriented.
Exactly. So what we need now is a system. So young gentlemen from Nakasero who want to hear more from me, for me, I would love to hear more from other Ugandans. Basically because Uganda is large, and Uganda is ours, all of us.
All right. We've talked enough really on economic empowerment and independence. I would love to use a few minutes that we are remaining with to talk about the politics, the political independence of Africa, the political independence of Uganda, and a number of issues, not forgetting religion and cultures. In 1960s, we had two groups that had emerged. The Casablanca group, which was in favor of politically united federation of African states immediately. And also had the Monrovian group, which wanted a looser alliance based on the global economic corporations like East African Community, SADC, and name but a few. Do you think getting independence as nation states helped than if we all united and got independence at one as Africa? Honorable, let me start with you, that you are more of a politician than Dr. Wanyankala.
Yeah. Well, I can never retire as a farmer's daughter. I'm actually a retired politician. But I'll say this. For me, the alliances seemed more promising at that time than anything else. That is one. Two, at that time, the alliances like East African Community, SADC and all that were taken very, very seriously. But then our former masters were not about to surrender. They kept hovering around like a helicopter. You know, they are there, you do this, you see, East Africa and what can it do? We'll do this. And then, of course, they were lucky, we got Amin, then somehow he was used, and before we knew, East African community had collapsed. Because East African community, when during the 70s, was more successful than European community, because they were still trying to put it together. So they just didn't want to see this bloc getting so powerful and independent, because we have what it takes to actually manage our own lives without them. But they come in with crumbs of cakes. You are not even supposed to eat sugar, but they don't tell you that. They just tell you how nice it is on your tongue, and you bite and you are done. So for me, even until now...
So you believe that we would have achieved more if we were in these blocks or united as Africa than countries getting independence?
No. Because of what I said earlier, where we used to have chiefs and then kings, and then that is one. Then two, not having been nurtured into democracy so that at least we elect properly for Uganda. Now, at that time, making us East Africa, and I have to vote for somebody in Meru in Kenya, and I have got to vote for somebody in Tanzania, I would have needed a lot of training, education, and value system in order for me to benefit from that. Right. So for me, getting independence as country by country, and then choosing to unite as East African community, and then choosing to come together as Africa. After I have understood how my village works, district works, Uganda works, East Africa works, then Africa works. That's what I would have preferred.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Wanyankala, we just talked about this when we were talking about tribalism. People are still lined in this kind of tribalism. I'm identified as a Mnyankole, and this has affected coming together as Ugandans. It is the same story that I see when we are celebrating independence as nation states and leaving East Africa as a community and leaving Africa as a whole. Do you think that we are making progress, or would make much more progress when we are united as Africa?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to say that building a nation is a process, and it takes time. Except that our nation were built by stroke of pain in 1885 when when those Europeans sat in Berlin and said, now Uganda, Vagisu, part of the Vamasava, you remain in Kenya and whatever. So anyway, before we even talk of alliances or regional cooperation, the regional cooperation needs to be built on a stronger foundation of well-built nations. So that comes to the question, as Uganda, do we exist as a nation state, or just a combination of tribes and all that? I think it is a work in progress. So far, we have our national flag, whatever the Kipro teaches, my neighbors, the Sabines win the gold medals, we all celebrate. The only thing is a mindset change, which my role model here talked about, that our minds are elsewhere. You find people killing themselves because of supporting money. Arsenal recently we lost someone, I think it is in Barara or something. And yet myself, when I was in the Ministry of Works, I was a team manager of Works football team. By then State House in the 1990s, also State House had in the Super League, and Ministry, I think, of Health and Agriculture. And we are supporting our Express, Vira, and KCC, Mbale Heroes. Mbale Heroes produce some of the best players. They were the Higenyes, the Asules. So I think that mindset change needs to we should focus on ourselves. And the sort of education also we have undergone makes us think that this whatever comes from the West Europeans is the best, and for us as Africans we have nothing. And yet within our traditions and cultures and so on, we have things that can build us, to the extent that now, even myself, I'm not happy about this World Bank thing, that because of the LGBT bill, they should deny funding. Really, can we be a free state if we were working under such arrangements? To the extent that I reaffirm Madame's comment that some of these ex-colonial masters are not in for us. They are partners who don't genuinely love us. So I think let us think of building a unity within ourselves. I know there's diversity, there are tribes and so on, but as I said, some of us have intermarried. We are working in situations where there are various tribes and so on. And I think most people who over talk about tribalism are the ones who want us to be divided. But I think we can coexist amongst so many tribes. But if we build Uganda as a strong nation state with good road infrastructure, good health, good environmental protection policies, good health care, good road infrastructure, all these utilities and so on, and people see the what they are getting, value they are getting from the taxes they pay, then that cohesion, that unity will be sustained over time. Then even when we talk about regional cooperation and so on, we shall be talking about nation states which are strong, which have a basis. And that means we have to fight evils like corruption. We have to also make sure that our education is very closely connected to the government. Where I was, you'll find that universities do a lot of research on the development and are very close to the House of Commons, to the government of UK. Even in America, these Harvard, those super universities you hear about, they do a lot of research and feed into government policy. And also what is done in the government feeds into those universities to make more innovation and create more ways of doing things better. And I think Uganda Management Institute and now we are trying to see whether we can work together with the Civil Service College to see that we look at some of these challenges that are on board so that we can overcome them and build a stronger nation.
Thank you, Doctor. John Zahebwa says we are celebrating independence when we let go of the colonialists, but it seems they did not go but left some legs. They went with the whole body but left one leg behind, which we call neocolonialism.
That's true.
We are not politically independent. Let me start with you on that, Honorable Secretary, that according to John Zahebwa, that we did not go away with the colonialists. We still have their one leg still spread in one of the countries or in all our countries. We cannot decide on our own. We have to get permission from wherever and for somewhere. If we take our own decisions or political decisions, then we face some challenges and consequences. Is this the independence we are celebrating?
Okay. You know, independence is one of those things which are very difficult to just be given. You normally have to take it. And but in order to take it, you also have to know what you want to take, what you are taking. Now, when you say the colonialists expect us to ask for permission, if you go and ask for permission, of course, they will gladly give it or give you half or whatever. But if you know your rights, this is where independence comes from. For example, if we can talk about, if I can go back to Covidex, my favorite, when the president said we should use, you should produce Covidex, use it, market it, and all that. I read in a number of social media messages that WHO will not allow it. Who is WHO? World Health Organization is United Nations, and United Nations, Uganda belongs to United Nations by choice. But because many Ugandans don't even know that, are not sure about that relationship, they thought it was so important. Now, what we used it, we were still marketing it, we are exporting it. What did WHO do? Now, I want to comment on this World Bank thing. You know, when you work with a multinational, the multinational organizations, the United Nations, are funded by all the countries in the world. So it tries to influence what that organization does. For me, when I read the letter from World Bank, my conclusion was somebody was leaning on them in order to deliver a message to Uganda. The best thing, if I was totally in charge of Uganda at that time, this is what I would have suggested. Just ignore them and get on with your work. Because who are you? It is like when you have a neighbor who is always blabbering, oh, that woman, oh, that woman.
Is it possible
you don't
for us to
stop
operate
digging
without
and
them,
working and
Honorable?
concentrate on what the neighbor is saying. You just get on with your work, and before she knows, she's eating dust from your feet.
Okay.
So, as far as I am concerned, the colonialists left. But in quite a number of cases, we are the ones holding on to their coat strings. You know, they want to leave, and we're like, oh no, well, how shall we manage? You know, whenever I go to these meetings, especially now that it is budget time again, and I find the former colonialists there, I'm like, really? We have educated so many young people, and they are brilliant. When, for example, you talk about ICT, quite a number of Ugandans have actually gone to college and they know what to do with these ICT programs. But somehow we don't ask. We go to Russia, we go to Europe, we go to the US and bring all sorts of experts. But in life, if you are in leadership, let me tell you this, there's nothing worse than having a consultant who does something you don't understand. How will you, first of all, how do you know what to ask for? And how will you know they have delivered? So, the colonialists have left. Let us wave goodbye. We shall not starve, we shall not die.
All right.
This is independence.
Thank you, Honorable Secretary Dr. Nyankala. Let me engage you on the multi-party system. We're talking about political independence, we're talking about political freedom, we're talking about uniting and sustaining and progressing as a country to secure the future. But the day we welcomed and opened the door for all the parties to join the politics, do you think was the time we brought in challenges that we're facing today politically, or it was a good card that we picked?
First of all, I think even talking about sustainability of national unity and all that, it requires good governance. And of course, having some democratic credentials. Because when you look at our political history, I think it has been turbulent. I think to the extent that I think that explains why Tanzania, which is less resource endowed, is now in the middle, low middle whatever, income whatever bracket, and Kenya, and yet they are not as endowed as we are. So I think we have had governance challenges and so on, and I think sometimes it bears on the sharing of the national cake. So for me, I don't have any problem so long as the parties are well organized and they represent different interests. That helps us even to maybe get a consensus in terms of national priorities on some of these things that we are trying to do to build our nation. So parties by themselves are not bad, but how are they organized? And why do we need parties? And what interests do they serve? Those are, I think, the big question is we should have a national consensus on, so that when these parties are in place, they produce alternative policies for consideration. So and they bring up the type of leaders, the quality of leaders, like Ma was talking about, people who are able to handle issues from a servant hold point of view, other than just grabbing and also promoting corruption and so on. So there's nothing wrong with the parties.
It seems
so
like
the parties are focused on doing the right thing and serving collective interests of all Ugandans.
The day we opened door for all these parties is the day we started, like Honorable started, that in some villages they are voting the drunkards to lead and represent the communities because they are the potential in the sense of who owns what.
Yeah.
Because during the one-party system we were voting on merit, but today it is it is the opposite.
Yeah. Okay, but I think...
And all the problems that we are facing in this country politically is because of engaging and welcoming everyone on board.
Yeah. Anyway, I may not think in that direction.
Okay.
But I'm saying that if people are given a choice, and with this digitalization, globalization, and so on, I think people should be able to make the right decisions. But I think it comes back to how to build a nation. Like the Americans had more tribal, the Red Indians, the people coming from different nations, but they sat down under the good leadership of people like Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, and so on, and they built a nation out of almost scratch, and they got the best national values. But now, if our political culture in Uganda has made the politics to be transactional, I raise so many. I understand as of nowadays, you cannot become an MP unless you have a budget of about 500 million or more. So if someone buys your vote, what do you expect him to do when he reaches parliament? The first priority would be to recover the money that is spent in. So I think we should have a national consensus.
Others are getting loans.
Yeah, we should have. Yes, and some of them are heavily indebted. So I think we should have a consensus on the sort of leadership, like that leadership preparation that Honorable Secretary was talking about. Even for us public servants, how are we prepared to serve others above ourselves.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Honorable Secretary, I don't know whether you were part of the team that opened door also for decentralization in this country. And we still had hopes in the local governments, but it seems they are not functioning as we expected, as everything has to come from Kampala, I mean the central government. Yet in some countries, if we talk about Kenya, we see some progress coming from constituencies which are doing miracles. Why has it failed here?
First of all, I'll just make a small comment about political parties. In my view, political parties are not bad and they could perform, but they should be given space. And in Uganda constitution, we should have a law which prohibits a setting up of the big man syndrome, because all the parties are led by men. But nearly every party is more or less a personal property of one big man. If Uganda can deal with that, no party should suffer from big man syndrome. That would be, because I remember what Nyerere said. When Nyerere was retiring finally, he said, for as long as I don't leave, it is going to be very difficult for Tanzania to keep changing presidents. So he dealt with the big man syndrome, because Nyerere and Tanzania were synonymous. Now, decentralization. As far as I'm concerned, once again, decentralization was a fantastic idea. It was not, I left when it was still being put in place. It was a good idea. But the challenge was, while the center wanted to decentralize, they decentralized all the responsibilities, but kept the resources. That is one. Two, in some cases, some of the responsibilities which were decentralized, the districts were never prepared for them. Three, there are some areas which should never ever be, you don't even think about it, be decentralized. Because I'm now talking about trade, because trade is very close to foreign affairs. All the districts which are at the border are actually practicing the foreign affairs program, the trade, you name it, it is all there. For us in agriculture, for example, we would love to have a very strong system at all our borders, so that people don't just import things from neighbors. Right now, Uganda is preparing to suffer a very big disease which has been imported from Congo, because we are importing gonja from Congo, and somebody went and brought banana planting material, and they also brought the diseases. I'm singling out that one because it is current, but there are so many things being imported, basically because the districts which are at the borders, which are supposed to be our door to let in and to let out, don't even know what we are talking about. I'm LC1, but I have no idea what we are talking about. Foot and mouth disease is next door. What has that got to do with me as LC1? So, for me, decentralization was a fantastic idea, but we should have taken like 10 years preparing all these districts. In fact, the reason you see some districts prospering and others stunted is because some have stunted leaders, and they are not going to change until that leadership changes. So decentralization is good, but let it be planned and let it have the infrastructure. Because, for example, when you say you are decentralizing because you are taking services closer to the people, the question I always ask is, what services are you bringing? How do you tell me that you are a district? I'll give you an example of Chibale district. Because recently I was in Chibale, Kagadi, and Kakumiro. None of those districts have got a stadium where they are young people, because 70% of Ugandans are young, below the age of 45. There is nowhere where they can go for entertainment. So young people are very strong, are very energetic, they are creative, but they don't have anywhere where they can go to get together. When, whenever I watch TV and I'm looking at these concerts being performed here and there, and then I go up country and I talk to these youths, they would also love to have what is happening at Lugogo Ovo. They would also love to have what is happening at Kololo, but there's no such space. Now, if you are a district and you have got 70% of your people who are not taken care of, what district are you and what services are you bringing? I don't want to talk about hospitals, because Uganda is not a country of sick people. I don't want to talk about schools because that is a there should be a primary school or two in every parish so that every child can go to school. So for me, with or without decentralization, if those
What
services
did
were
Kenya
there,
do
I don't
that
care
we
whether my
didn't?
district headquarters is 50 miles away, as long as my services are here.
All
Thank you.
right. Wanyankala, what is Kenya doing that we are missing to benefit from this decentralization?
I remember at the time when they were making the constitution, there was this federal thing, federalism, that is in America, maybe Nigeria and so on, and China. But I think Kenya grabbed, I don't know whether through the influence of Obama, I don't know. But now they have, for example, a Senate and the lower parliament. And with due respect, these are the national heroes now will be in the Senate, where apart from our 500, 600 members of parliament, I don't know whether they all have opportunity to talk because of numbers. This would be now the senators of about 50 people.
Then we would be having members of parliament going up to 1,000 if we...
No, in Kenya, I think they're about less than 50.
Yeah,
Even America, they're 50.
Yeah.
But the advantage of that is that it would do, as much as we say we are blown up these numbers at parliamentary level, they would help some people who would filter out from expertise point of view some of these national priorities and so on. But so Kenya has taken on the federal approach to the extent that the resources which Madam was talking about are given to those areas. They call them under the governors. Those areas are called what?
I think they
The
call
governors.
counties.
Whatever. But at least enough resources are given to them and they are able to account for them, and I think that's the way centralization can work. But in Uganda, I think also it was done a bit hurriedly, and by 1990s, they were being showcased as one of the best African countries in terms of decentralization. But I think when the challenges started cropping up, there have been tendencies of recentralizing. For example, now the accounting officer, is, I think, appointed by the center. Yes. So developing the same powers. But as much as there are also challenges of human resource. Recently, I met a friend of mine who is a cow, a Kachalan. It was my secondary OB. He's in that corner district in Karamoja. Okay. They were bordering Somalia and whatever. And the only established senior staff is the cow. And yet he's retiring in 3-month time. So he was struggling to get an education officer and an accountant. So in such a district where you have even less than 5% established staff, how do you expect that district to perform? Right. So, and most of the districts are also understaffed to below 30% established capacity. So you can decentralize, yes, but what are the accompanying resources? Exactly. And to make that that decentralization work. And also in terms of leadership, recently we lost a cow. I think it was in Queenie. Some LC5 chairman understand wanted to have 5 of his relatives employed, and the cow resisted, and some of the cow just died mysteriously. We don't know. There was some investigation going on. So I think we also have leadership challenges at those local levels, and I think government should take the initiative to create the necessary capacity in those local areas so that the services can be brought to the nearer to the people as the main objective of decentralization.
Thank you, Doctor. Our time is really over. I need to end our discussion here. But as we end, I wanted also to talk about a number of issues, but time has not allowed us. Land is being privately owned, fragmented, and how do you see the future if we still have this challenge? Where the next generation is going to live because land does not expand, but the population is increasing. We are at the stage of development, and a number of issues are still not yet set. At independence, all Ugandans were more patriotic and national, but everyone seems now tired and none-bothered. Who will stand in for Uganda, for this country to progress, what needs to be done? We wanted to look at the 3 pillars of government, of the state, how they are functioning. A number of issues that would really want to talk about, but because of time, we may not talk about them. But I would love to get your parting shots and your last comments. Let me start with you, Dr. Wanyankala.
Yeah, I think in terms of land can become a time bomb, because in Africa, whereby 80% of the population relies on land, and yet in the secondary schools we make English a compulsory subject, and and agriculture an option, is something that makes a little sense. So, under the only property that cuts across the board is land. So, if there's a land privatization and sometimes I think land grabbing also going on, I think this is not the way to go. Even in terms of developing agriculture, I think the government should have. I think we should review some of these land policies, so that as much as land is a property of an individual, but government has a control over it in terms of development priorities. Because like us who are the elites, we have money. We're going to buy land from those poor villagers. Then we fix, and those people who would want to use it, because the economical disadvantage, we make the land less productive. So I think we have challenges around that area. I think for this about what?
Let's look at sustaining unity and progress to take charge of our future as a free nation. Your last comment?
Yeah, sustaining unity is we need a national consensus. We need maybe a national conference where we can sit together as academics, scholars, religious leaders, traditional leaders, all these retired politicians and so on. And we come up and set up national priorities in the education, in the politics, in the education sector, agriculture, and so on, and so that we can have a vision that is tailored to building a nation in terms of having equality, in terms of regions, in terms of access to resources, and taking into account different interests for purpose of gaining stability. Because at the end of the day, when you have a nation, there's always what we call a national cake, the central budget. When people selectively access it, that is what creates instability. You have all these political controversies, people struggling against each other and so on. But when we harmonize that, and there's more equity in terms of the economic policies we have, and in terms of sharing national resources, I think people will see a reason to be unified and to work together to build Uganda as a nation, of which most of us are very proud.
Okay. Maybe if I may request for 1 or 3 or 4 seconds, you comment on religious or religion and culture. We are practicing foreign religion. We taking up on names and practicing a number of practices from the foreign or beyond our borders. Food, we no longer like our food. We are putting on foreign clothes. We are doing more of the other cultures than our own cultures. Where is this going to take and leave us?
Personally, myself, I'm very religious. I'm born again, and religion has no boundaries. It's one God for the whole world. So I don't have a problem whether I'm called a Tom Alfred. But what is it to me? Do I love my neighbor? Do I love my God? And do I love my... And I'm also I've been a special envoy in charge of Kampala, Uganda region, on behalf of our Umukuka, the traditional leader in Mbale. So, and I don't see any conflict between my religion and my work and whatever, because like the Bamasava, we have a very rich culture. Our Imbalu Kadodiri, you have seen during campaigns, without Kadodi nobody can get crowds. So a lot of good things in our culture. And I think you call us another time and we expand on these some of these issues.
Interesting.
And in terms of the 3 pillars of government, we need a judiciary that works, we need a parliament that works, we need the cabinet and public servants who are skilled and who are capable, who have the right nationalistic and patriotic credentials to push our country forward. Because there are so many developments going on. As much as we are saying there are gaps, but I think the direction in which we are heading is correct.
Thank you, Doctor. Your parting shots, Honorable.
Yeah. The first thing I want to tell every Ugandan is whatever happens, whatever is happening now, I want you to always say, we are all Ugandans. Uganda belongs to all of us. Secondly, I want to request any Ugandan who has got a piece of land that unless you really, really must sell it, please hang on to it. Land is becoming very precious all over the world. When you listen to other countries, I don't know if all of you follow the news abroad. When you hear that Britain may soon be declared bankrupt and all that, then you know that things are not good. So hang on to whatever you have. Secondly, don't wait for government. Do whatever you can with what you have wherever you are. Another thing I want to share is that of late, nearly the whole world is looking to Uganda to see what we can produce in order to feed the world. That is good money. That is good business. So, go not waiting. I want you to get these details and find out how can you benefit from what I'm talking about. Produce for feeding Uganda, feeding the region, and feeding the world. Then I want to comment on this issue of religion, culture, and Ugandans not eating our food. The other day I had a chance to visit a school. And at this school, we arrived early, so we had breakfast with them, and we had lunch with them. Now, breakfast was tea with milk and sugar. That was already given. Everybody is supposed to drink tea and sugar. I don't take sugar. So they had issues with me. Secondly, what was going with the tea, they had brought in mandazi, those huge, sometimes they call them Donalds, but here they are really mandazi. So they had brought in those mandazi, huge ones, and a very tiny banana. When we got to lunch, they were eating rice, meat, and there was also matoke. Now, that is one of the expensive schools in Uganda. The question I asked the head teacher about the breakfast, which was a heavy, thick chindazi followed together with a tiny banana and tea with sugar, is how expensive is sugar? Because sugar is now going up to 6,000 and all that. And why must every child drink sugar? That's the question is, are we doing this because everybody is doing it or because we can afford it? Some of these things we are living our culture, because like somebody keeps saying these days, he has his muogo with his breakfast. Honestly, I want to request any Ugandan tomorrow, please plan to have a small piece of steamed muogo with a fried egg or a boiled egg. And then with that, if you can have your fruits, that is the perfect breakfast. We are now talking about people suffering from diabetes, people becoming overweight. It is because we are eating other people's diets. But then our lifestyle is not their lifestyle. Because like the people who eat bread for lunch, those sandwiches, which when Ugandans go abroad and you give them sandwiches for 2 days, they will say, we have had enough. We think even somebody may be sick, we had better go home. So, my thinking is that Ugandans, we are independent. This is the right time for us to pick up the mantle. I want us to, start writing your own stories. Let us stop feeding on foreign stories. Write your own stories. Then make films, make videos, go to YouTube and share your own stories. You don't do it, those Bazungus are going to come here, they will take your stories, they will make films, then they'll bring them back and make you pay 100% more for what they got from you, rather than if you did it. You can do it. However old you are, you can tell a story. If you learned how to write, you can write that story. If you have a phone, you can record that story. I want you to go and learn how to share. Finally, this is independence. Take charge of your life. Thank you.
Most welcome, and this brings us to the end of UBC Ground Zero, today's edition. Ampaire Amonoteka is my name, and I had the privilege and honor to have Honorable Victoria Sectorico, former Minister of Agriculture, and is now Director of Private Sector Foundation. And also we had Dr. Tom Alfred Wanyakala, is the lecturer of governance and public policy at Uganda Management Institute. Thank you for being part of us, you who have been on the other side of radio, and those who were part by participating in this program. Other programs are coming your way on Western Nile Radio, on Butebo Radio, on Magic 100 FM, and UBC Red. Ampaire Amonoteka is my name. Until next time, same program, same station, same time, and maybe different topic. Happy Independence Day, Uganda. For God and my country, allow me now to sign out.
That was Ground Zero Season 2, a production of Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Uganda is born again, free and independent.
Did you know that Kanuti was the first person to raise the Uganda flag? Major Kanuti Akorimo was the man who hoisted the Uganda flag as the Union Jack, also known as British flag, was lowered to mark the birth of the newly independent country, Uganda, on 9th October 1960.